Hi there, welcome to Transfer Talk. 6 days remain in this window. So much is in the pipeline. Could we see 3 players leave Manchester United before the deadline? Arsenal are yet to sign a forward. Will Mikel Arteta find the player he wants before the deadline? We're live to the club's training ground for the very latest this hour. Aston Villa have been busy in this window already. Could there be further defensive reinforcements to come? And we'll be hearing from Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola. That's live from 12:30 this afternoon. And a very good afternoon to you at home, to Olivia Bazaglo, Dan Bardell and Kwaku Afari. We start, though, with Manchester United and Marcus Rashford. Time is running out for him to get a move away from the club. Barcelona, his preferred destination, are yet to make an offer for the forward and are struggling to create any salary space. Kwaku, I'll come to you first. Feels like Rashford's running out of time. It feels like he's running out of options as well.
Yeah, there's a lack of suitors when it comes to European football, and there will be a reluctance from Manchester United to let him go to a domestic rival. But I think the biggest factor in Marcus Rashford potentially leaving Old Trafford is the wages. He's one of the highest earners, and he earned that contract after that very good season under Erik ten Hag in the 22-23 year. But he hasn't replicated that form, and he's fallen out of favour. Ruben Amorim has been very public as well. The manager coming out and talking about how he wants more in training from Rashford, and Rashford talking about how he wants a new challenge. So it seems like a separation is the best option for all parties involved. But it's going to be very difficult to do. There's only a few days left in the window. A permanent move is very difficult to do for a player like Marcus Rashford in January. And if you look at Europe, you look at Barcelona, they're finding it difficult to sign players. Look at Borussia Dortmund, who've got their own issues. They're currently 11th in the Bundesliga, just sacked Nuri Sahin. And then you look at where Marcus Rashford wants to go and wants to play football. AC Milan is an option off the table as well because Kyle Walker has moved there and they've reached a quota when it comes to non-EU players. And so it does seem like he's running out of time, running out of options. And you wouldn't be surprised to see, come the end of the window, Marcus Rashford stay at Manchester United.
Do you think there would be a reluctance to let him go on loan or permanently domestically? Because at this point now, it feels like Manchester United would almost let him go anywhere to me. Did you really think if a team from the Premier League came in for him, they'd think, not sure about that? I
think it's what Marcus Rashford represents to Manchester United. Fans live vicariously through these homegrown players that knows what it means to play for the football club. And it's a similar situation. I know different in terms of levels of quality, but could you imagine Phil Foden going to a domestic rival, Bukayo Saka? These players that
they're
really
wanted, aren't they? It's quite clear Rashford's not wanted at this point.
I understand that, but even if you look domestically, who's going to take on those wages? North of £300,000 a week. And Marcus Rashford is a player that has shown quality, but in recent seasons we haven't seen that. And so for a domestic team to get that deal done with Manchester United would be very difficult. And Manchester United, there's an element of them not wanting to come back and bite them. With him going to a domestic rival and doing well there, it could hamper their chances of qualifying for Europe if that's their goal this season.
Certainly feels like there's going to have to be some compromise from Manchester United and Marcus Rashford to get a move in the final 6 days of this window. Kwaku alluded to it there, Ruben Amorim's comments after the victory over Fulham at Craven Cottage. Based on what he said there, we know he's training with the first team, but can you see him featuring for Manchester United if he stays beyond the window closing on Monday night?
Yeah. I think so. I think there's no other option. If he does stay at Man United, he's got no other option than to get himself back in the squad. I mean, what Amorim said was pretty damning. Obviously, he'd rather play a 61-year-old goalkeeping coach over someone that doesn't give 100% for the club. But I feel like we knew this. I feel like from the very first moment that Marcus Rashford got left out of a squad, of one of Ruben Amorim's squad, we knew exactly the reasons, and that hasn't changed in this period that he has been out of the squad. Now, I think it's more than likely that he stays at Manchester United, like we say, running out of options, and I think we'll see the professionalism of Marcus Rashford coming up if he is at Man United sort of post-January, in the January transfer window, because the only person that can get him back playing football again is himself. So it's in his own hands, and surely the one thing on his mind is wherever he is playing football, come post-transfer deadline day, it is his primary ambition to get back in the team and playing football wherever he is. And so you think he's going to have a chat with Ruben Amorim. He's going to have to put whatever differences they have aside, but he's also got to give his all for the club. And you'd think for someone that's come through their academy as a homegrown talent, you think that he would put all of that aside and give everything to get back playing football again.
The door's ajar, though, isn't it? You would say the door's ajar for him. It's not like Jadon Sancho this time last year, where he's training away from everyone else and he's not allowed with the first team, essentially. If Rashford does the right things that Amorim wants, if he doesn't make that move this month, there will be a way back, because there has to be, quite simpler.
Well, on the topic of potential outgoings and potential incomings at Fenerbahce, we spoke to their vice president, Acun Alhaji, earlier today, and he dismissed reports in Turkey linking them with a move to sign Marcus Rashford.
I think Rashford is a fantastic player. I really like him, and who can say no to him? But at the end of the day, when in your team you have some plans, it's not logical to get two players in the same position, which are the two much better than other players. So what I would say is these kind of players needs to play, and if he comes, then one of our players wouldn't be able to play. And when it came to in front of us, unfortunately, we said no for this transfer. So there is nothing that we are interested about him. And these are, of course, some rumors that spread and everyone's talking about it. But I can say very comfortably that we are not interested.
OK, so we'll get some more on Manchester United in just a moment. But let's get to Arsenal, who could be active before the deadline with potential departures. Gail Davis is at the club's training ground ahead of speaking to Mikel Arteta later today. Gail, good to see you. Looks like Arsenal might have a busy few days ahead, but the focus will be on whether or not they can sign a striker.
Yeah, very good afternoon, James. It is a busy few days ahead. We know that because they're just training at the moment and they're jumping on a plane to Girona to play their final Champions League game, and they're hoping to obviously qualify for the round of 16 without the need for the extra game, the extra playoff game, because they are being stretched, aren't they? The squad is looking particularly skinny in certain areas, as it has done since the start of this window. What we know is that Arteta has been asked on numerous occasions about strengthening his squad. They are actively looking to improve their squad. He hasn't come out and said, I want a striker, but read between the lines. And he needs reinforcements because he has no Gabriel Jesus for the foreseeable future, and he has no Bukayo Saka till at least March, and that's all being well. And then it's going to take him a little bit of time, isn't it, to get up to speed because of the sort of injury that he's got. So where does he go and who does he bring in? And it is January, isn't it? And there's been a lot of talk of the likes of Benjamin Sesko, who's from RB Leipzig, but is that the sort of deal that gets done in January? Probably not. It feels much more like a summer move. And even in the loan market, if you look around, they've got Neto and Raheem Sterling. So both of those domestic loan places are full. They are going to have to look elsewhere, aren't they, in terms of loaning from abroad. What I would say is there's not much noise coming from Arsenal, but I've been at Arsenal on deadline days in January before, and the likes of Trossard and Jorginho arrived, didn't they, a couple of years ago, and that almost came from nowhere. So you just don't know. And I would point to the comments that Ange Postecoglou was talking about last Friday after Wednesday night, when all the teams, the Champions League sides, they all play together, don't they? And they know the state of play for their sides. He said that extra game has meant that the market has stalled a little bit. And what it means is that clubs may be willing to let some players go that they might not have let go if they do or don't make knockout stages. So it could mean that there's a little bit of movement in those last few days that perhaps we haven't seen so far.
Get away from transfers for one moment. Will Arsenal be appealing Miles Lewis-Skelly's red card against Wolves? It's caused so much debate.
Yeah, well, it left Arteta absolutely fuming, didn't it, on Saturday afternoon. And he didn't need to say much because I think so many of people have spoken for him. So much talk about whether or not he should have seen red. What I would say is we've seen Miles Lewis-Skelly training this morning. He, of course, can play in the Champions League tomorrow night against Girona. What Arsenal needed to do was put their intention to appeal the cards by 1 p.m. yesterday, and then gather the evidence they need by 1 p.m. today. And I just checked in a few minutes ago. They don't know when the outcome of that will be. What we know at the moment is that Miles Lewis-Skelly won't be available for that Manchester City game on Sunday, or the second leg, two of the games that he'll miss against Newcastle. So they'll be desperately hoping to get that overturned. And they will point to the Bruno Fernandes sending off against Tottenham It's kind of quite similar in terms of challenges, and that was overturned. Do you remember at the end of September from a red, and Fernandes was free to play? So they'll definitely want him. The good news, Ricardo Calafiori was out there, goal scorer, winner of the game on the weekend. So they have got a bit of cover in that department. But he's having a breakthrough season, isn't he, Miles Lewis-Skelly? And they desperately want him available for those big games. I mean, they have quite a few left backs, don't they? I'm sure you're talking about the likes of Zinchenko and Kieran Tierney, because they are two of the players that may well not be here come post sort of deadline day at the beginning of February.
Gail, thank you very much for now. OK, what about Liverpool? No news on the out-of-contract players as of yet. No signings. Vinny O'Connor joins us from their training ground now. Vinny, good afternoon. Do you expect any activity at the club, incomings or outgoings, over the final few days of the window?
It's been quiet so far, hasn't it? I'm expecting it to remain quiet. In fact, one of the conversations I've had today has been on that very subject as well. And again, the expectation is that it is going to be a quiet end to the transfer window for Liverpool. I mean, it's been very much the story since Arne Slot came in as head coach, really. You go back to the summer and he spoke about just how impressed he was with the squad that he's got. And he said only a few weeks ago that it'd be very strange for him now to start moaning about the strength of the squad and looking to get players in when he doesn't necessarily need to. I think there's always been the proviso, of course, that if one of Liverpool's long-term targets were to become available and they could activate that, then they would do something. But at the moment, it's looking like that's not very much the case. And certainly, you know, you look at the squad at the minute, maybe there's been questions that Arne Slot was asked the other week about maybe bringing in a centre-half. I see Jarell Hato at Ajax has been linked with Liverpool at the moment as well. But you know, he made the point that Joe Gomez will be back in training, will be back towards full fitness in the not too distant future. Of course, Ibrahima Konate has been playing with that knee injury, so it's not necessary really to add numbers in the centre-half area. I think the likelihood is, if there's going to be any kind of business, then it will be potential outgoings. And we're looking at players like Cade Gordon, who's been on loan at Norwich so far this season, only got less than 120 minutes of game time throughout this entire season. That loan spell was cut short. Potential for him to go out again. Luke Chambers, of course, who was actually doing well at Wigan until he got a back injury around about October, and again, potential for him to go out on loan. We know, of course, that there's interest in Jayden Danns, interest in James McConnell as well from the Championship, but I think when it comes to their futures, Liverpool will take a decision closer to that transfer deadline, and of course, it depends what offers come in. So, yeah, unfortunately, it could be a very, very quiet deadline day for me if I'm here at Liverpool's training ground.
Vinny, thank you very much for now. OK, let's get back to Manchester United. We've discussed Marcus Rashford, but Napoli are set to resume talks with Manchester United over Alejandro Garnacho. Now, Napoli want to get an agreement in principle with the winger and his representative. The club's still discussing a potential fee. Dan, do you get the sense that this deal could get done? Because it feels like United are now willing to compromise on the fee, and we know in terms of the financial implications and the situation they're in with profit and sustainability rules that it does feel like their hands are being forced and they are going to have to sell.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate byproduct of where Manchester United are at the moment. I think if you were to write a list of players that Manchester United wanted to keep, I imagine Garnacho would be quite high up on that list. The issue is he's probably one of the few players there at the moment that has genuine suitors, and we know there is genuine interest from Napoli and there's genuine interest from Chelsea. So whilst, you know, Manchester United would probably prefer to sell Rashford, I still think Garnacho is the more likely sale, just because there is somewhere for him to go at the moment. We know Napoli have got a vacancy on that left wing now, and probably the same could be said of Chelsea. I actually think he's a brilliant fit for both of those clubs, but for Manchester United, it's just unfortunately what PSR seems to have done to the transfer market, because there'd be loads of players they'd rather get rid of ahead of Garnacho. But if the price is right, he'd be a reluctant sell at this time.
Yeah, it feels like out of those two players, Rashford and Garnacho, it feels like Garnacho's closer to leaving it in this window. Another player, though, this is new today, Casemiro, open to a move to Roma, and Manchester United are willing to let him leave on loan before the window closes, but they would prefer a permanent deal. It feels like he's not really part of Ruben Amorim's plans. He's not been featuring much in the last few weeks, and this could free up some money when it comes to wages. Yeah,
100%. He's a player that came in for big money, one of Manchester United's highest earners, got 18 months left in his contract, and is one of their only sellable assets when it comes to recouping money, not just in terms of the fee you get for him, but also the salary you'd free up. And if you look at Manchester United's midfield options of Kobe Mainoo, Toby Collier, Manuel Ugarte and Christian Eriksen, they're all ahead of Casemiro now in the pecking order. And that's reflected in the games that he's played this season. He's missed Man United's last 4 games, hasn't featured in the last 4 games in the league. Toby Collier has come off the bench in their last 3 games. So it shows you where Casemiro stands in terms of Ruben Amorim's pecking order at Old Trafford. Casemiro is a good player, right? When they signed him from Real Madrid, he's one of the best defensive midfielders in the world, but age has caught up with him. He's a player that has served Manchester United well over the period of time that he's been there. But if they can find a suitor for him in this January transfer window, you expect them to make a move there. And if Roma are one of those suitors, you expect Manchester United to be pretty aggressive because they do need to shift players off the books before they can bring one in.
So there's 3 potential outgoings at Manchester United. In terms of incomings, there have been positive talks between Manchester United and Lecce around the signing of Patrick Dorgu. They continued yesterday. Olivia, in terms of incomings, how much of a difference would it make for Amorim to bring in a player who would fit within his system? Because we know there's no left-back at the moment who's fit and does fit within how he wants to play.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can only speak from experience and having supported a team that have played 3 at the back and won the Premier League playing 3 at the back. I would say, arguably, those wing-backs are the most important position if you are going to play that system that Ruben Amorim wants to play. And like you say, there's no real left-back that is doing that, and if they can get someone in that knows the role, that can play that position, but you're effectively being a winger, so you have to have the ability to contribute goals and assists. You cannot just get away with being a good defender. You have to be able to contribute and get into the box. And a bit like we're saying, you know, Chelsea don't play a 3 at the back, but Marc Cucurella does it very well. You have to be in the box and you have to contribute. And I think for Ruben Amorim's system, that should be a massive priority, because the difference it makes is absolutely huge. And playing players that sort of out of position there is never going to work.
It could be a really busy few days for Manchester United. A reminder, later on the show, we'll be hearing from Pep Guardiola live at 12:30. Next, though, will Aston Villa be bringing in more defenders before the deadline?
hopefully. So I can say that the deal is done. We just put a project in front of our young talents. But on the other hand, of course, we have a fantastic last year that we improved the talents that came to our team, and we took care of them.
OK, let's stay with Aston Villa. They're believed to have made an offer for Villarreal defender Juan Foyth. Dan, you're at the game on Sunday enjoying a bit of corporate. What's the feeling in terms of the transfer strategy at the club at the moment? And why do Villa need a centre-back so much? Because it looks like that Tyrone Mings injury isn't too much of a concern.
No, which is great news because it didn't look brilliant at the time. And obviously everyone knows how bad Tyrone Mings has had it with injuries over the last 12 to 18 months. So to know that it's probably not going to be a bad one is good news. But regardless of that, it feels like Villa need reinforcements in that area. It feels like there's kind of a mini rebuild going on in January at the moment. Villa have been linked with a lot of players. There's a lot of noise around incomings at Villa this January, which wasn't really what I was expecting. But then you look at it and think, well, Villa at the moment are fighting on three fronts in terms of going for the top five and the Champions League. They're still in the FA Cup and obviously have got a good chance of progressing in the Champions League as well. Villa haven't solved the right back position in terms of it's always Matty Cash, and that's it. And Matty Cash has been brilliant for Villa, in my opinion. He's a very underrated player, but they need an alternative. And when that alternative comes along, it's always Ezri Konsa shuffling across, and his best work comes at centre-back. I think it's quite clear that he doesn't really want to play at right-back. He's much more at home at centre-back, and he's arguably Villa's best centre-half as well. Villa have been looking for a similar player that can play centre-back and right-back, and the two players that have been linked with, in Foyth and Disasi, they can both do that job. Both have done that job previously. It sounds like Villa want both, though, which means they're obviously a little bit worried about this Pau Torres injury in defence as well. Pau Torres is crucial to how Villa build up. And then, obviously, Buendia looks like he'll probably be moving on, and they're looking at players in the attacking positions as well. So Villa have already been one of the busiest teams this January, but it doesn't sound like it's going to stop, and it sounds like there could be more happening.
Yeah, so Villa have put in a bid for Juan Foyth at Villarreal, and we understand, as Dan was saying there, that potentially there could be a move for Axel Disasi at Chelsea. Olivia, not the only Chelsea player that is potentially of interest to Aston Villa.
No, yeah, Joao Felix as well is another name. Just on Disasi, Fabrizio Romano is reporting that he's already spoken to Unai Emery and that he wants the move, and that both clubs now just have to find an agreement. I'm still not entirely sure he fits the way Villa play, but I suppose we'll wait and see whether that one happens. Joao Felix is an interesting one because Chelsea only signed him permanently in the summer, and it really felt like it was the only reason Chelsea signed him was so that they could eventually sell Conor Gallagher to Atletico and get that pure profit money. I'm not sure there was ever a real plan for him because the position he wants to play in is a number 10. We all know that Cole Palmer occupies that number 10, and that's not gonna change anytime soon. Felix has come on and he's made an impact in the Conference League, in that FA Cup game against Morecambe, scored a couple of brilliant goals. But what I'd say about him is very good on the eye, he's brilliant to watch. End product, I think, is an issue. But with Emi Buendia potentially leaving Villa, I suppose it does open another spot in the position that he plays. But again, it feels like Villa, Dan, have quite a lot of options there. And for someone like Morgan Rogers that's had an absolutely brilliant start to this season, do you really want to be shifting him out wide to make way for Joao Felix? Because I suppose you can't be spending that money and bringing Joao Felix to the club unless you're going to start him.
Like I said earlier, he's a squad game for Villa this season with what they've got left to come. And I actually think Rodgers' best moments come from the left-hand side as that left 10. So I think there is a space, and we know Emery's held an interest in Felix before as well. So I just think because of the calibre of player he is, if Villa can get something like that done, there is a space for him in the team.
Yeah, it certainly could be a busy few days for Aston Villa. There is loads still to come, though, on the show. Manchester City signed 3 players in a week. Could they add to that and bring in a defensive midfielder before the window closes? Well, we'll hear from Pep Guardiola live next. Welcome back to Transfer Talk. Now, Manchester City are in Champions League action tomorrow night when they take on Club Brugge. Must-win game. We'll hear from Pep Guardiola and Josko Gvardiol very shortly. We saw Omar Mahrez and Abdulkadir Kusanov make his debut at the weekend for the club. Disappointing debut for him, wasn't it? We've been reporting thereafter potentially getting another defensive midfielder in as well because of the situation around Rodri. Dan, Douglas Luiz looks like a player who could be on the move. Do they desperately need cover this month, or do you think they can wait until the summer?
I think it would be something they'd like to rectify now on a temporary basis. At times they've been too easy to play through, and if you lose a player like Rodri, obviously you're not going to be able to get someone in of the same calibre, but you need a body in the same position. And Douglas Luiz is a very, very good technical footballer and someone that's worked with Pep and worked at Manchester City before. When Douglas Luiz made the move to Villa in 2019, Pep didn't want to lose him, but he wasn't going to get a work permit at Manchester City. So he went to Villa, got that work permit, and was a good player for Villa in the Premier League, in particular when Unai Emery came in and really got the best out of him. He's gone to Juventus. It's not really worked. I don't think the Italian league has particularly suited him. But you've got a player there for Manchester City who would be plug in and play. He'd be ready to go straight away. You get him in there. And because Manchester City is such a high-level team, he's not a stereotypical number 6 in the mould of Rodri, but he'd certainly make them better.
Liv, Omar Mahrez looked pretty impressive at the weekend. I know he didn't score, but really promising signs.
Yeah, he looked brilliant. I mean, I feel like whenever we talk about City and signings, they very rarely get them wrong. And if we're going off that game, Omar Mahrez looked absolutely brilliant. He was unlucky, he's got a couple of offside goals. But I thought the impact he had, was brilliant. I also think with Kusanov as well, bless him. I mean, it wasn't the ideal start, but after that, I thought he recovered really well. And I thought it was really nice of Pep Guardiola to not take him off at half-time, to give him 10 minutes of the second half. And then he got a standing ovation from the crowd. You would never have known that first 10 minutes had gone how it was. With adding a midfielder as well, I think City will be very happy with how this window has gone. They never really spend money in January, and they've gone out and identified positions that they desperately needed. And if they can get Douglas Luiz over the line, then yes, that's absolutely brilliant, because I think out there's not many number 6s you're going to get in January that are going to be anywhere close to the levels of Rodri. But I just feel like they may have conceded that they're not going to win the Premier League, that they're probably not going to win the Champions League this year, that I'd say they're now probably favourites again for the top 4 because it finally looks like they're clicking. Do they now just wait until the summer? And if there is that number 6 available that long-term could potentially be a replacement for Rodri, who that is, I don't know, but maybe just waiting till the summer now. I'm not sure it's as big a necessity as maybe what it may have been maybe a month ago. I
would challenge the fact that City don't get it wrong. I think a lot of the aggressive business they're doing in this January transfer window is as a result of some of their recent signings not going to plan. If you think about Matheus Nunes, hasn't really gone to plan. Kovacic is a great footballer, but isn't necessarily what they need. We yet to see the best.
Kovacic has gone to plan for them. He's been better than he was at Chelsea,
to an extent. But Doku as well, Savinho, I feel like there's reasons why Man City are being super aggressive in the transfer window, and I think that they were going to go again and try and bring reinforcements because they're desperately missing Rodri.
Yeah, it feels like they brought that rebuild forward. I think ideally in the summer they'd have done a lot of business, but because of form, injury and the regression of some key players, they had to act now. In terms of players that look like they might stay at Manchester City, James McAtee likes to stay at the club in this window. Do you think that's good for his development? We saw it worked for Phil Foden, but clearly he must be frustrated with the lack of opportunities he's had this season.
Yeah, City fans are crying out for him to play more football. And in recent weeks he has. He's been coming off the bench and making appearances for them. He's a player from the academy. We know how important those kind of players are to football clubs. It's difficult at a club like Man City where you don't really have time to bed in. They're in win-now mode consistently. This period of time, though, might be his opportunity to flourish. Like you said, realistically, Man City aren't going to win the Premier League. It's going to be very difficult to win the Champions League from their position. So a player like McAtee can look at this as an opportunity to play more minutes and really feel like a City player, because when you're surrounded by superstars that have won it all, it's difficult to really embed yourself in the squad. But he's a player that understands the football club, and if he can get more substantial minutes, you might see the best from him, because Man City fans who are in the know are saying this is a very, very good player. And it'd be a shame to lose him or send him out on loan when he has got an opportunity to play extensive minutes for Man City this season. OK, we will hear from Pep Guardiola and Josko Gvardiol very shortly ahead of that must-win game against Club Brugge. Let's get to Ipswich, though, because they could be really busy in the final days of this window. They're still in the market for a striker, possibly another right-sided player, depending on the severity of Wes Burns' injury. He was injured at Anfield at the weekend. It's thought Ipswich could also try and bring in a central midfielder if a deal is right. The club currently just 1 point adrift of safety. Livia, it feels like they're doing everything they can. We saw what they did last summer.
looks what they're doing in January now to do what they can to stay in the Premier League, to ensure it's not just one season in the top flight?
Yeah, absolutely. I still think it's going to be tough for Ipswich. I still do, but they had a net spend of 100 million in the summer, and that put them in the top 3 clubs in Europe. They were very proactive. They obviously knew what they needed to do to stay in the Premier League, and they had a very, very good summer. All of those players that have come in have had a pretty good impact, I would say. But this January, obviously, they brought in Jadon Philogene. I think he adds more quality from wide areas. Ben Godfrey on loan from Atalanta strengthens their defence, which I think was a weak point as well. But I think the one that stands out the most for me is Julio Enciso from Brighton. I think he is a real bright spark and could be, he genuinely could have that difference or be the difference, between them going up and going down or staying up. But I also think the fact they've held on to Liam Delap, there's been question marks over, whether Ipswich would let him go in January, and I think that was never an option for them. I think they're clever. They probably know that in the summer a lot of clubs are going to come in for him, but the impact he's had this season and he will continue to have in this second part of the season is huge. And yeah, I think they've given themselves the best possible chance of staying up, especially because the teams around them haven't really strengthened at all this window.
Yeah, Dan, what have you made of their recruitment? Because in the summer they signed players who had done well in the Championship. They kept faith with players that had got them into the Premier League. But now they have been looking for Premier League experience. We saw Calvin Phillips sign in the summer. They've now got Enciso in, Jadon Philogene. It didn't quite work out returning to Aston Villa. But just one point adrift to safety. Do you think they're putting themselves in a situation to give themselves a real fighting chance now?
I've always thought they're a team that's going to get better as they get more used to the fundamentals of the Premier League. I think Enciso is a smart signing on the basis that if you look through their squad, I don't think they have that type of player in their squad. They've got an honest squad that will work hard. There is some quality in there. There's definitely pace in there. And Delap has taken the lead by storm. I've watched quite a lot of Ipswich this season. I actually think their recruitment was good because the recruitment that they made meant that these are players that could potentially make the step up to the Premier League. But a lot of those players aren't going to lose value. They're only going to make profit on them. And if they were to get relegated, they're players that can also thrive in the Championship. So I liked their recruitment and I thought it was something that they had to do. They've had moments of quality, but are maybe just a couple short. I think the signings they've made so far in January will make them stronger. Philogene, quite simply, probably missed a step in his development by going straight to Villa. I think he probably should have gone to Ipswich in the first place from Hull, but he's there now, and hopefully he can get some confidence back and get himself in the Ipswich team and get some goals and assists, because that wasn't what he did at Villa. But you know, when you're trying to stay up, you've got to have that number 9. You've got to have that reliable goal scorer, and Delap's been that guy, but they know if anything happens to him, they might struggle to find the back of the net, which is why they're after a supplementary striker. Yeah, as promised, we will hear from Pep Guardiola very shortly, but we'll stick with one of the clubs towards the bottom of the table right now. Wolves back in talk to Lens over a deal for Kevin Danso. They're pushing again for an agreement around the £16 million mark. He was their first centre-back target. They then moved on to Emmanuel Agbadou, who actually has been starting for Wolves over the course of the last few days. Kwaku, do you think Danso could help Wolves in their battle against the drop? They've been dreadful conceding from set pieces, but they did look a little bit more resolute at the back against Arsenal. Yeah, there was a lot of Wolves fans crying out in the summer saying it's a dereliction of duty that they didn't bring in somebody to replace Max Kilman, who was so influential, not just on the pitch, but also off the pitch. Agbadou was a crucial signing for them. Like you mentioned, he started recent games for them. Kevin Danso adds a little bit of a different dynamic. He's an athletic centre-back who is an international. He's an Austrian international, played very well under Ralf Rangnick at the Euros. He also knows English football very well, played at the academies of Reading and MK Dons, also loaned at Southampton in the 1920 season. And he's established himself as a formidable centre-back that will definitely add to this Wolves side, who are conceding way too many goals. Conceding goals on a pace similar to that of the Derby team of the 07-08 season that went down with that record amount of points. And so Wolves need reinforcements. We've seen in recent weeks that Vitor Pereira is not willing to change his style of play. And if he's not willing to change his style of play, then bring in personnel that can help to shore up that defence. OK, we will hear from Pep Guardiola very shortly. We'll also hear from Jonathan Johnson, the French football expert. We're going to be live in Paris to discuss potential incomings and outgoings at Premier League clubs over the course of the next few weeks. But who have Tottenham got in their sights? We'll hear from Jonathan Johnson shortly, but Pep Guardiola is finally here. We can hear from him now. He's speaking ahead of the game against Club Brugge.
And then if there is any Belgian media.
Do you regard it literally as being as big as a final, or is it just an important game for Man City?
Well, the situation that we have, you have to have an option, is win the game, and If not, we will not continue in this competition, and we wanna go through to have another chance to play another 2 games to qualify for the next stages. So it's not a problem; it's an opportunity, a challenge, and we will face it.
You've qualified for the second stage knockout phase, the Champions League, for so many years, and I would have thought that that's a matter of pride, given nobody else has managed to do that from England. How important is it for you to maintain that record, and what kind of a blow would it be to the club if you were to get knocked out?
It's not personally for me, it's for the club, and of course it will be not good, but I'm not thinking about that right now. So I know for all the people concerned about what's going to happen in qualify, I appreciate it, your concern, and all of you to don't qualify, but I'm thinking we're going to do it.
Pep, what do you want the Etihad to feel like tomorrow night? How important is it?
As much as they come, we'll be fine. Not to have to do the rest, but of course, if we perform well and we are in a good rhythm, they will be there like they were last game against Chelsea, that we felt more than ever this season that they were with us. And even when we start really, really tough, I know the opening we're going to face the last years, the last 20, 21 games, didn't lose a game. So I saw the game against Juventus, and as many games as possible, and they are incredible, solid, consistent, they don't concede chances, they are aggressive. We played against them years ago, and they make a step up in terms of how aggressive they are and the patterns, and they play really well with the ball, and we have to perform really well to win the game.
And can I ask you about team news? What state are you in? Do you have any fresh injuries or anyone you're not expecting to be available tomorrow?
No, the guys who were able to the last game against Chelsea, they are available, and I think Oscar came back as well.
Pep, would it be embarrassing for both you and Manchester City if you didn't make it into?
Ask me a question after. I know you want it, but thank you for your concern again. You know how worried you are. We are out, but we are going after the game. You can concern me, and I will answer you.
You're on a bit of a run at the moment in the league, at least, and won again at the weekend. Do you feel like things are turning?
No, not yet.
Why do you say that?
Because it's few games.
Hi Pep, you've sort of been asked about the consequences otherwise of going out, but financially this club's always had the money in recent years from getting to Champions League quarter-finals, semi-finals, final. If you do go out, has there been some discussions about the drop in income? Could that affect transfer budgets, things like that?
I don't know. I didn't speak with my CEO about that. In the last, 2 or 3 years or 4 years, always we have in the transfer windows, or I would say in the budget, always positive. Of course, I'm not naive enough to know that how important it is financially for the club go through in this competition, but sometimes it happens, sometimes don't. But of course, we wanna try to go through, especially for sportive reasons. And after that, when I said many times recently, like in the last years, I'd say 5, 6 years, in Spain, net had been amazing. This club, so. In the club said, okay, the situation is the situation, we're going to deal with that. So we can spend, we spend, we cannot spend, we're going to spend.
Yeah. Hi Pep, you were speaking after the game at the weekend about the importance of John Stones coming back. Is he ready to start this game tomorrow?
He played 35 minutes, he played really well. We'll see today, how does he feel?
Hi Pep. What's the sort of approach to the game tomorrow? In that, do you want to try and get it done as quickly as possible, or is it important to be patient? Like, how do you sort of view it?
Well, we'll like to score goals in the first 20 minutes a lot, but I think it's not going to happen. The approach is now today is read the game you have to play. What they do today is completely relaxed, no emotional, is understand the game. And after tomorrow, we have the reading that, I know this type of games that you have to put something special, something that have not been enough so far in the Champions League to win the games. And it's simple. The question is simple. So if we don't win, we'll be out. If we win, we'll go through.
Saying special things that you've not managed to do so far this season in the Champions League, is that purely just managing the games?
No, I've been in many years in the Champions League. Since I started my career as a manager, this type of games I play many times. Sooner or later, you have to play this type of games that you win, you go through, you don't win, you are out. So many. But it happened more in further stages, not I would say right now, but we are here for the reasons that we know that we are not good enough. And but in this situation, I live in many times.
I want each of these guys to get through the rest. Mickey?
Hi, Pep. What do you expect from Club Brugge? Because they're in a similar situation where they need to get something from the game to stay in the top 24.
I don't know. They expect a tough opponent. When a team is 20, 21 games unbeaten, no lose, it's because they are good. Otherwise, no, there are no secrets about that. So, and I saw the games, and I saw the reason why when I play against Aston Villa or play against that they beat them, or Juventus the last games, or against Milan they play good, and the way play against Celtic the Glasgow, the games against Genk in her league, so they do really well. Different variations in the mid-up, in a man-marking situation, and always uncomfortable for that, and they have to read well what you have to do. But of course, in every team, Manchester City included, there are weaknesses, and you have to try to discover those them and try to punish them.
Hi, Pep. This group of
OK, much more throughout the day here on Sky Sports News from Pep Guardiola. But some breaking news to bring you now. We understand that Arsenal have submitted an appeal after Miles Lewis-Skelly was shown a straight red card by referee Michael Oliver at the weekend against Wolves. It's our understanding that an appeal has now been submitted. We'll hear from Mikel Arteta later today on Sky Sports News. Now, coming up in the final part of the show, we're going to be live in Paris to speak to French football expert Jonathan Johnson, who have Tottenham got their eye on in Ligue 1. Hi there, welcome back to the final part of Transfer Talk. We're joined now by French football expert Jonathan Johnson, who joins us live from Paris. Jonathan, great to see you. Let's start with Tottenham in need of some players. One name that has been mentioned is Angel Gomez. What can you tell us?
Yeah, this one's a really interesting one. Obviously, Gomez, quite a high-profile player for Lille over here in France at the moment, and on a contract that's expiring. So while we are discussing this before the end of the January transfer window, I would suggest that this is probably more one for the summer. But of course, being on an expiring contract, he is able to speak to potentially interested clubs. He's not the only Lille player as well in that situation at this moment. And it sounds like Spurs are very keen on potentially bringing him in as a free agent in the summer. He spoke about it publicly very recently as well and admitted he's just trying to focus on his football, but does admit that there are clubs making inquiries. Obviously, a difficult situation for Lille. Could be tempted to try and cash in on him if somebody was to make an offer for him this window, but it seems most likely at this moment in time that this is one for the summer and one that Spurs are leading the chase for at this moment in time.
What about Evan Gesson? He's been linked with a move to the Premier League. So who wants him? And can you give us any indication about what sort of player he is?
Yeah, very interesting profile of player. Scored a great goal over the weekend. West Ham very keen on him. And he's a player who I think has now hit the sort of maturity level, which makes it normal that players, that clubs in the Premier League are taking notice of a player like him. He's got quite an interesting profile, fairly rangy, and has started to add consistent goals to his game as well. So definitely a profile to keep an eye on. And obviously with Nice crashing out of Europe and now in a battle to try and secure continental football for next season, he could be an interesting target for clubs if they were to miss out on that.
Lons could be very busy before the deadline. Wolves want their centre-back Kevin Danso, but do they face competition for a signature?
Yeah, so this one is a bit of a developing situation. Now, Danso was on the move away last summer, and then medical issues complicated that, and he's been in and out of the team with Lens ever since. Lens very keen to move him on and potentially get his wages off the books, looking to offset what's been quite a tricky financial situation for them this month. They've already sold one player to Rennes in Brice Samba, the goalkeeper formerly of Nottingham Forest, and now Danso is also of interest to them as well. So this could be a battle between Wolves and Rennes to potentially sign Danso, but it does sound like Danso potentially favours a move to the Premier League at this moment in time.
Hi, Jonathan. Just finally, Villa looking to add to their defence, and there's a lot of noise around Axel Disasi at the moment, the Frenchman. What do you know about this?
Yeah, so this one was a curious one coming into the window because there was speculation given his situation at Chelsea, obviously not quite up to the expectations of the player and not necessarily integral to Enzo Maresca's plans that he could be potentially of interest to a club, potentially for a loan deal in the January window, coming back to Ligue 1. The situation of French clubs financially makes that extremely difficult. And given Villa's defensive situation, it's no surprise that they've looked at the potential available options and that Disasi is rapidly emerging to be potentially one of the front runners now. Obviously, Villa have looked at Loic Badet as well at Sevilla, but it sounds like Disasi is emerging as the favourite to strengthen Unai Emery's defence.
Jonathan, thank you very much. We'll catch up with you soon. Now, Tottenham are understood to have considered signing a new left centre-back earlier in the window. We spoke about Angel Gomez there. But instead, it looks like they're focusing on signing a forward after bringing in the goalkeeper, Antonin Kinski. Dan, not long left to this transfer window, but it's clear Ange Postecoglou needs to get some players through the door.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, and I think pretty much other than goalkeeper now, you could say that they need to address any position on the football pitch. Such a turbulent time for the club at the moment in the Premier League, really struggling. I think in the form guide, I think it's only Southampton that have got worse form than them. We've got to the 28th of January, and I would have thought they'd have been busier by now. It feels like Ange Postecoglou needs some help, and at this stage, we're not long left. We don't know whether he's going to get that help, but I mean, he's forward the biggest priority for me. They always look weak in midfield. They're too easy to play against in transition. I don't think they have that guy in the midfield at the moment, a real enforcer. There's a lack of leadership all around the pitch for me as well. Obviously, injuries are playing a part, but there's certainly things that need to be addressed before Monday for Tottenham.
Thank you very much for now, guys. Plenty to do for Tottenham and Ange Postecoglou. Don't worry, Good Morning Transfers. We're back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Then join us at 12 p.m. tomorrow afternoon for Transfer Talk. You won't want to miss this evening. The transfer shows are coming live from Battersea Power Station. Join Kaveh Solokal, Dharmesh Sheth and Mark McAdam at 5 and again at 6 p.m.